I recognize member for Columbia River, Revelstoke.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to speak here today. This is my last session, and I'm not running in the next election, but obviously I have a strong interest in making sure that the current government is going to be replaced. I absolutely think that that's essential. It's a difference in priorities, it's clear, but this is also a government that's adrift. And after 16 years, it's a government that is defined as much as anything else by cronyism. 16 years on, government adrift defined by cronyism. Now, the promise I made in the first election was the same as I made in the following two. My staff actually posted it on the office wall so that we would always be reminded of this. We promised, and we promised clearly, that if we were elected, that we would work to empower people, that we would empower ordinary people, and that we would be on people's sides, we would fight for them, and that we wouldn't sell out. And we've done that. We fought for our seniors, for proper care for seniors. We stood with teachers. We fought for resources for search and rescue and highway rescue, to respect community views with regards to jumbo. Throughout, we talked about local decision-making. And this is something that I share with my colleagues on the NDP side, the belief in democracy and that decisions should be made by the people, not by those who can afford to meet with the Premier, but by those that we represent, that voice is the one that should be the most dominant, and it should guide public policy. And that is not what happens in this province now, and it's one of the reasons why there needs to be a change of government. So why does politics matter? A lot of people say that, and it's true that there are periods with bickering and negatives. Those are real things that are part of the process. But there are far more good things that can be accomplished. And I'm reminded, since I see my colleague here, and since she talked about somebody who did tremendous work for the Columbia Basin Trust, about the work that, there were many who worked on it, but her husband, Ed Conroy, Corky Evans, they had the idea of the Columbia Basin Trust. And I live in an area where we see the benefits in our communities from that idea each and every day. And this is literally a generation later, decades later. And that is an idea that is going to go forward generation after generation. That's what you can accomplish in politics if you're willing to put up with the negatives that are there. But it also means that you have to be rooted in the community, rooted in an area where your focus is not on satisfying those that can pay $20,000 to sit beside you at a dinner, but rather to serve the people that you represent. And that's what I saw with Ed and with Corky and with others, and I see the good work that came from it. And when you look at this throne speech, it had no idea. You know, I used to mock Premier Gordon Campbell for this, the 10 great goals or all of these other things, but there was actually a central idea that was there. Whether it was sincere or whether it was accomplished, that's something different. Here we are 16 years later, where there wasn't an idea that you could pull out of that throne speech. It was absolutely bereft of any central idea, completely empty. And you compare that to when you hear the leader of the NDP, or you hear my colleagues talk, there are all sorts of ideas that would make a great throne speech, and one that I hope to hear in the fall. And that's ideas like an affordable childcare plan. Now, that's something that would benefit the economy, that would benefit generations. An affordable childcare plan, and it's there. Wouldn't it be nice to have a throne speech with an idea like that? That's what we're going to do in this province? A real plan for agriculture, a real plan for food in this province, a real plan that's effective on climate action, a sincere commitment to 4-lane and divide the Trans-Canada Highway, an affordable housing plan, a poverty reduction plan. These are all things that the BC NDP is offering. Now, that would be a throne speech. That's an idea. That's something that people can get behind, where there is benefit for more than simply those that can afford to get the Premier's ear. Broad public benefit. That's what we should be doing in this legislature, but we don't, because we have a government that frankly has lost track of that public need. And they're not simply not connected to the people that need these things. You know, in my area, I'm stepping aside, I'm very excited about Jerry Taft, who's the BC NDP candidate in my area. He was 5 years youth parliament here. First business he opened was in high school. He was on council when he was 21. He was mayor at 25 of the district of Invermere. He's only 34 now. He started and owned Jerry's Gelati. He's got 2 restaurants, Stolen Bell Coffee, 5 rental properties, part owner, the motel, executive of the AKBLG, executive, the UBCM, director of the RDK. He's experienced, he's bright, diverse background, successful, young, and he's running for the NDP to replace me, and I'm really excited about that. I feel like we're trading up, and that's a wonderful thing to do when you step aside. You know, people set a standard for government and for this legislature with their vote, a chance that we really only get every 4 years. And I hope this May we're going to see the majority of people in British Columbia being able to see through BC Liberal propaganda and elect a different group of people to form government. To all British Columbians, I would say what we in Columbia River Revelstoke recognize, that there is something seriously wrong with this government. They do not deserve to be rewarded with your vote. You look at the record, and it's a record of failure and cronyism. And, you know, we had the 2 previous speakers, they made a virtue out of the failure of the LNG strategy. You know, like, hey, we're a lucky thing we don't have one industry. But, you know, that's not what the intent of this government was. They have failed utterly. You know, over the throne speeches, we've gone from throne speeches that were completely dominated by LNG to where it was mentioned once or twice. Let's remember what this government said was their goal, their single laser focus of this government. It was to create a liquefied natural gas industry. It was, as I said, hardly mentioned in the throne speech. But you know, in previous years, we were promised 17 LNG plants. The first one was going to open years ago, right? We're nowhere close to that. We're nowhere close to that. We were going to have 100,000 jobs. Now, that was a made-up number, just like many you're going to hear from the government side again. 100,000 jobs? How many have we had? We have 0. There's not one LNG plant up and going, and none are likely in the next number of years. Now, maybe this government's going to reduce the sales tax, right? Maybe that's their big promise budget day. Let's reduce the sales tax by 1%. That's the big announcement. Remember in 2013, the big announcement was no sales tax. You're going to get rid of the sales tax because of all of the money from the LNG. So that's a bit less grand, going 1% cut, if that's what you do. You promised in 2013 before the last election, no sales tax. You were going to have no debt. You know, no debt. How's that going for you? It's kind of going the wrong direction completely. Now, you could change the words and try to make it something different than the debt, but the debt has risen under this premier more than any other premier in the history of British Columbia, which is a bit rich when you promise no debt. To take it the opposite direction, you were going to have a $100 billion prosperity fund from revenues in LNG. The BC Liberals have collected substantially less than Premier Ujjal Dosanjh from natural gas revenues. So we are worse than those 90s you talk about for collecting money. So you're a long way from $100 billion. In fact, you're at 0 from natural gas revenue. Still, the minister responsible, no doubt, is going to stand up and say, oh, be patient, you know, it's coming. And we'll talk about a fictitious number like 20 billion, right? We had that in the advertising, fictitious completely, as if somehow fiction over time, repeated again and again, changes people's lives. It's just an incredibly cynical strategy. Does that failure deserve to be rewarded with your vote? I would say to all British Columbians, it does not. You need to set a standard with your politicians. Otherwise, accept that this is what you get. You just get this sort of alternative facts thrown at you. The throne speech, the BC Liberals talked about tax relief coming, right? That was one of their things. Well, in 2013, as I said, they promised no sales tax. So whatever it is, remember this: the tax relief for the people that they serve has already come. Yeah. They already gave them what is now $1 billion in tax cuts for the top 2%. And they talk about the middle class being looked after. Yeah, they're looked after, all right. They pay the bills. They pay the bills. We have MSP raising. We have BC Hydro rates up. We have ICBC rates up, and a lot, right? 40% coming. BC Hydro, the same thing. It's up 28%. There'll be a new surprise if they form government again. Ferry fares up, bridge tolls up. You know, the real relief would be to get rid of MSP, and that's what the Leader of the Opposition's promised. He will get rid of the MSP. Now that's something tangible and real and fair. The BC Liberals, and here I'll talk about a local issue, they promised for 10 years, they had it on their websites, $1 billion resort in the Jumbo Valley. They took donations from the proponents. They created a municipality, and I see the minister who did it and defended it over there. They created the municipality of Jumbo. It's the newest municipality still in British Columbia. Well, what a farce. What a joke that is. They disregarded local voices. They disrespected First Nations spiritual beliefs, and nothing now but an empty municipality, still not with one person, not with one road, not with one building. There is a concrete slab that was meant to be the base of a lodge put in the wrong place, which happened to be an avalanche path. There never was an investor in the last 20 years for that project, but it was pushed by a group of BC Liberal cronies quite willing to grab public lands and public money. There is still a municipality. There is still a council that this government is paying for in Jumbo. It is unbelievable. You know, so that's a municipality that should have been dismantled yesterday. Does the Jumbo farce mean that BC Liberals deserve to be rewarded with your vote? I would say no. Now, the Leader of the Opposition has promised a sincere promise to 4-lane and divide the Trans-Canada Highway. You know, he's not the first politician that's said this. This government has promised it many, many times, you know. In fact, the Premier stood at UBCM and talked about a period of 10 years it would be done, many years ago. This is, of course, the main road connecting the rest of Canada to BC, and despite the Premier's talk about making it a safe and dependable road, the improvements promised have not been delivered at all. Prior to the 2009 election, signs were put up along the Trans-Canada around Revelstoke, Golden, and Field. It said Trans-Canada Highway, 4-laned and divided. It's coming soon, okay? Those signs sat there, they weathered, but they needed to be replaced, of course, for the 2013 election. We had new signs, said the same thing, that it's coming, don't worry, it's coming. It's like LNG, it's coming. Don't worry. Well, I have friends, of course, who work for the Highways Department, right? And what did they get delivered for this election? New signs. There's new signs going to be put up. Now, the roads hasn't been improved. It's going to take 60 years at the pace they're going to do what the signs promise. But the same old thing, the same tired idea to put up new signs. By the way, the only thing that the contractor's allowed to claim overtime for that is put up the signs. Get them up there, because that's the priority. So there you are. This is a highway where there are deaths, there's injuries, it's repeatedly closed. How cynical do you have to be to make those promises knowing full well that they're not promises that are going to be fulfilled? And why would people in British Columbia reward that sort of politics with your vote? You look at the BC Liberal record attacking our public education system. When public education is undermined, it's our province's children that are deprived. It's our children. A 12-year attack on our students culminated in a Supreme Court of Canada ruling confirming what we all knew, that the BC Liberals had acted in bad faith. In bad faith. Why would you reward that by voting for a government that cannot act in good faith and actually honor contracts that they've made? Look at BC Liberal records with seniors. What's more important than looking after our seniors? That's what everyone says, but it's actions, it's decisions on money. And where does this government consistently choose to make cuts and to fail seniors? What senior can afford to go and spend $20,000 to sit with the Premier and tell their story? You look at proper child care. You look at the BC Liberal indifference to child poverty. You look at the absolute failure. I mean, today was, in question period, another example, an absolute failure in the Ministry of Children and Families. You look at the Orwellian statements. You know, the MLA for Richmond Stevenson, he talked about debt-free BC. You know, I'm sorry. You cannot make this stuff up. Orwellian language is thrown around a lot as a term because we are in a period of it. But it was a promise to get rid of the BC debt that the Liberals made in 2013. Debt-free BC was on the side of the 2013 BC Liberal campaign bus. When BC Liberals took power, there was less than $40 billion in debt and contractual obligations. You know what there is now? There is $170 billion in debt and contractual obligation. That's the record. That's the numbers. And still you have an MLA willing to stand up and say they're making BC debt-free. What? You're going exactly the opposite direction, faster than any premier in the history of British Columbia. You know, again, it's especially when you're promised to get to zero. And I just would say, is that what you want to reward with a vote for the BC Liberals? You look at the failure of government to manage mine sites. Actually, if people take the time and look at what went on at Mount Poly, you look at the failure of BC Liberals to protect workers. We, in British Columbia, had 2 mills exploding from a known problem, and where the oversight clearly was not there, just as it was not there for Mount Poly, with tragic results for the people of Burns Lake and for Lakeland. You have Sullivan Mine, Banks Island, Swansea Ridge, one example after another where the government failed in its oversight. And you have to ask yourself, does that need to be rewarded? Is that the standard you want to set for government? And I would say no. I mean, I'm not running, I'm just telling you, do not reward that. Set a higher standard for governments. Insist that they do better than that. Look at the HST, the debacle that was, the deceit that surrounded the HST. You look at the health researchers' firings. You look at the secretiveness of this government. The donations that pay to play, $10,000 per plate, secret dinners with the Premier, which is what she was doing last night, right? She raised more, hundreds and hundreds of thousands more last night. You look at that money going to pay the Premier hundreds of thousands more than she earns as Premier. She already makes almost $200,000, but hundreds of thousands more added to that. You look at how the sessions are canceled. You look at the giveaways of BC Rail. Now, that's a giveaway that included bribery and deceit. And you consider that the corruption of BC Rail, that giveaway, that this government chose to, instead of look at it carefully, they chose to spend $6 million to keep that information out of the public view. And this is what you're going to reward the BC Liberals with another 4 years in power? You look at the partisan takeover of BC Hydro. You know, point to the other public utility of that size that has a partisan appointment, not on the board, Okay, the board can be, I guess it's all partisan, that's clear, but in actually the staff, the senior management, where you wouldn't choose to have engineers or experts, rather you put in a partisan to run that corporation. You know, who does that? No other jurisdiction does that, as far as I can tell. And you look at the $55 billion that BC Hydro ratepayers are stuck with because of sweet, overvalued IPP contracts. And all of that, I have to say, does not deserve to be rewarded with a vote. You know, and all of these things I spoke of as failings have consequences for people, real people. Now, sometimes it's financial impacts. Other times it's more personal. You know, as MLA, I met with my colleagues. It was a very emotional meeting. We met with the families of those that lost loved ones or had loved ones injured. In fact, some of the injured people were there from Burns Lake and Lakeland. You know, these are people that have not found that they have had their issue looked at. All they see is the government protecting their interests, making sure that they are not politically hurt, and quite willing to deny closure to families that were hurt through what, in my mind, is clear neglect from government. And I look, too, at the sister of the smeared health researcher, Roderick McIsaac, and she's still looking for justice. She's still looking for justice. And instead of doing what is right, the political interests of keeping that pushed away takes priority. You know, BC Liberals don't deserve to be rewarded with your vote. In Columbia River Revelstoke, I'm proud to say, we have seen through BC Liberal propaganda consistently. And I think that my colleagues would say the same of the areas that they represent. We voted to resist the government agenda and to put children and to put seniors, to put local manufacturing, local food production, our environment, and justice ahead of cronyism. And I'm really proud of the people of Columbia River Revelstoke and others who have done that. And I look forward to a time when a majority of British Columbians make the same choice. You know, the leader of the opposition has laid out an agenda that I feel really excited about. I think it's an agenda that would help people tremendously. And I know when I sit around the caucus table, I sit with colleagues that are rooted in their communities and have in their hearts the interests of those that they serve. And I think there's no doubt many on the government side that are of the same, would be the same. But the difference is the willingness to stand up when the time comes and to actually speak out for what's right. And what you see again and again from a top-down government is that those diktats from the government are enabled by government MLAs that aren't willing to stand up. And I see going forward tremendous hope in an NDP government that is going to take care of the things that I care about. They're going to have good daycare. They're going to get rid of corporate and union donations. There's going to be seniors care that we can be proud of in this province. We're going to have the best public education system in the world where people do not fall through the cracks. All of those things are possible. And that's a day that I look forward to. The election can't come soon enough. And a throne speech that contrasts with the emptiness of this one should come in, I would say, September of 2017, where there are real ideas and benefits that will come to generations to come, because it will be a government rooted in the communities and rooted with, at its heart, the interests of the ordinary person. For that, thank you very much.